It's Tuesday, October 17th. Live and direct from New York City, the only place where Taylor Swift hasn't been this week. ImmaLetYouFinish podcast, number 160. Taylor, you've been in New York. You've been everywhere. You should come here. We'd like to talk to you. It's Amy. It's Courtney. Well, I would, because guess what? We got her on this show, and this show, we're already global. Like, literally, I look at we're being listened to around the world. But I mean, listen, I'll take a little Taylor Swift coming on the show, even if she waves by and says hi. We get all those Swifties who will hate us, but still like us in some fashion. Did you see how they are? They're now mad at First We Feast and Sean Evans. Did you hear this? Because that's Hot. You know, Hot Ones, the wing show. Yeah. So evidently, they made a promo for a show, something coming on, and they just said, "Are you ready for it?" Which is a title of one of Taylor Swift's songs. So I guess the Swifties thought, "Oh, is she going to be on there?" And they realized she wasn't going to be on there. And they see it as, "Why are you co-opting a title of her song and telling everybody?" And I'm like, this new thing with the fan base is feeling like they have to be at war, or people own titles and words, is kind of really nuts. It's super, 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 super nuts.
Yeah. And on that note,
it's the shit that I wish you guys could see Amy's face, because she has zero patience for that kind of bullshit. I mean, zero patience with that kind of bullshit. She's just like, no.
I think people need to realize that fan is short for fanatic, and we see what fanatics do worldwide. So anyway. All right, speaking of fanatics, something you deeply care about, and I'm mildly interested, Madonna. Though that said, the shows are not selling in Brooklyn, so there may be tickets. There are tickets available still for the Barclays show. So I did ask our Block Association. I mean, what the hell? Of course I'll see her if she's down the street.
But remember, the Barclays show were originally the second run of the U.S. dates. The Madison Square Garden dates that are coming in January were the original 4 dates to that tour that had sold out. So then they added more dates. So this run that's going to come to the U.S. when she opens the tour in December is the run that was supposed to be, okay, I'm coming back to the U.S. for those who didn't get tickets for the first time around. I can see why maybe those tickets, they're still available, because everybody held on to their tickets first time around. Can I just say this? Now, you know I love Madonna. I love Madonna lots. Madonna is my number one girl. Everybody knows this.
You're leading up to like saying you didn't like what you saw. I mean, this is like when you have to qualify it, but no, really, you're leading up to saying this looks like an incredibly produced track date. An incredibly produced, expensive, gorgeous, well thought out, choreographed track date. Am I wrong?
Where she's kind of, from every clip that I've seen. First of all, let me just start by this. She looks beautiful. She looks beautiful. She sounds great. I was really happy that she sounded great. She's also not doing anything. Every clip I see, she's just walking. Okay, let me walk over here. And it's just weird to see Madonna, who in concert, movement is a very big part of Madonna's show.
Dancer.
She's 65. I don't expect Madonna to be popping it like the Confessions tour or Blonde Ambition. But it's weird to see Madonna just kind of walking around. And it does feel like with her having no band and no backup singers for this tour, and then you're not really dancing, all of the reviews have been amazing, right? But I'm noticing the reviews are all framing it around, we're so glad she's here, the help out. So this feels like
pity fuck of tours.
She almost died. We almost lost Madonna. She's the last of the big 3. Let's not kill her and be like, this show has pacing issues. Look, the show to me looks like it has pacing issues.
Well, I mean, in her defense, it's the first run. This is a huge extravaganza. Yeah. But I mean, I saw a few clips on social media. That whole Michael Jackson thing is pathetic that she does, because she does a thing where behind the screen where it's her,
but it's all of these things. See, if you're a Madonna fan,
I know why she did it. I'm just saying you don't even know if it's her because she's behind a screen.
But it's not it's not her, and it's
that's what I thought.
This show has references to her full career, past tours and all of that. That is a reference to her very first tour, the Virgin Tour, which had the screens, and she came down, and the final song of the Virgin Tour was Like a Virgin, which she did as a mashup with Billie Jean. So it's a throwback to that. And there's a bunch of those moments in the show where she's referencing the past tours, past videos, past things. I had no problem with all of that. It's just every clip I keep seeing, and I'm like, I will wait and judge when I see this show. It just feels like, okay, so she just walked over there. Oh, now you're walking over. It's like a lot of walking. Just walking with hand movement. And here's the thing. They all get to the age where there's a lot of hand choreography. I love hand choreography. I get it. But at one point, you're not even using both hands in your hand choreography. It's just kind of like one hand. And I'm like, what's happening? But I love Madonna. I will, listen. I hate that you put it that way, because now I was like, what am I trying to think? And then when you just said a really expensive, well-produced track date, I'm like,
yeah,
that might be the perfect definition of what I'm saying.
And that's not a slam, it's just what it is.
Kind of, sort of.
Yeah, I mean,
it's gorgeous. And you charge a lot of money, and here's the thing. You guys had 3 extra months to get this together. The sound broke down the first night.
I can't blame her that. I mean,
no, you can't. But then the second night, there was another issue, and you came on the stage late. And because of the Madam X debacle, where she paid overtime at every house and lost all of that money, she doesn't want to do any overtime. So she ended the show early, leaving out 4 songs. Now, I'm sure if it was just 4 any old songs, the fans wouldn't be that upset. But if you end the show after Rain, and the 4 songs that the fans missed are Like a Virgin, Holiday, Music, and Celebration, I can see why fans who paid
they can just listen to the record, since that seems to be the basic vibe about this, which is like, we're not going to get a band because everybody loves the track. So in a very cynical sense, you could listen to the record and show videos. I mean, I'm sorry to be cynical. That could be watch me on television,
It's a little like, how much money did you charge people for this?
Yeah, you know what?
It's like, what's happening?
Sucker born every minute. All right. Let's give this woman like a minimum amount of time. Okay. Jada, go away. I'm
going to say that we have been consistent on this show. If you listen to Courtney and Amy for the past 4 years, we've been calling her on her bullshit for 4 years. I've had people argue me down after hearing something I've said on this show. She's da-da-da-da-da. I'm like, she's full of shit. She's full of shit, in my opinion. I just know from things that I was around and things that I saw, I'm like,
Well, here's the thing, and I'm not the one to bring it at the original thought. If her entire brand has been built on speaking her truth, which is the most stupid phrase ever, because there's no her truth or my truth, there's true or not true. But if her whole thing is about speaking my truth and divulging and opening up to her audience, so now we basically find out that everything she's been saying has been a lie.
That you've been lying.
You've been lying.
You've been lying, willingness, peace. And then when you showed the moment when you were supposed to show people, that's why I always tell people, stop believing people whose idea of peace and self-love and help is selling you something.
She's a Scientologist, okay? They're Scientologists, I'm sorry, or they're Scientologist adjacent. So right off the bat, I'm still trying to figure out, on a completely shallow note, how she's gone through a very extreme autoimmune thing and not only grown her hair back, but done the worst thing you can do to your hair as someone who has done that.
Chemically processed it.
Which is bleach it.
What?
If you want to destroy your hair, is bleach your
head. And then wait, the best part is she drops all of those bombs. We're not together. And I guess trying to clean it up, has been back on TV yesterday trying to do it. And I'm like, we don't care.
Well, obviously we do care because people keep talking about her.
But you know what? I am very proud to say I've not watched one of the interviews.
Oh, me neither. Why would you?
I've not clicked on any. Usually for the show, I'll watch some shit, even if I hate it, to be like that. I'm like, I refuse to give this a click. I refuse to read any of the articles. I just refuse.
She's not an interesting person.
Would she just stop and go away? Just go away.
She's embarrassed. All right. SNL came back. I didn't even realize it was gone, and that's not to be catty. I keep forgetting because I don't watch it, and not because it was so great back then.
Were you never?
Oh, of course I watched it. Of course I watched it. God, I remember watching it in the 70s. It was a big deal to stay up to watch SNL. It was the first of its kind. I just don't watch it because it comes on super late. I watch the clips the next day.
Yeah.
Pete Davidson was back. It was the first time he's been back since he left the show.
Because he was the last host who was supposed to do it right as the strike started and it shut down. So then they brought him back. Yeah.
So he was, SNL has had the unfortunate history of having to be funny after tragedy. There was a lot going on in the world, and I think that he handled it very well. He was the right guy to say the right thing at the right time.
Right.
And again, I thought the "I'm not Ken" thing was hilarious. Look, I don't want to get into a big thing with Pete, but he does nothing to encourage this much hatred. He seems like a perfectly nice guy. He has never trashed any woman he's gone out with. He's never cashed in on any woman he's gone out with. He's a decent human being. He's very open about his issues. He's very forthcoming. I got no problem.
I actually
with
like him. I think he's a New York guy.
He's totally a New York guy, Attleboro guy.
He's had some struggles, like we've all had some struggles.
Well, he's had more struggles than we've had.
True, but I think New Yorkers, we relate to people like who are our own, who've had some struggles, and you still keep pushing through and just trying to do your best. And he is funny. And he is funny. And like I said, he's a decent guy. He's been very open. He's dealing with real stuff. This is not just like I'm not in a good mood type of thing. This is real stuff. Right.
So yeah, it was good. I didn't watch it. Ice Spice to me is like the biggest joke ever perpetrated on the American public, and I don't even want to. She sucked. Big surprise.
She has made a song that is cute or two. She absolutely has, right? But it is. I look at her and I'm like, you are boring. You don't have to text me. I see it.
I'm not. It's not to you. Yeah, okay. Somebody else.
You know what? The read. The read of her. Wait, no. I'm just saying. No, just to me. The read of "It's Not to You" and Not Even Look Up was very much like trashy hoe. I'm not talking.
No, this is important. This is a building thing. Sorry.
Yes, but yeah. I was watching that going, okay, so I'm glad for any artist you're getting these big looks. But I remember even if you were hip hop going on Saturday Night Live, they required you to have a band. They did. That was a rule. You had to have a band. So, okay, she does this performance without a band, but it was just kind of like nothing. It's like, I touch my hair, look, my ass, I touch my... It's just
she's not talented, that's why.
I mean...
She's not talented.
She's
cute.
Yeah. It's like this little cherub or something, but there's
she's not talented. And the only reason Taylor Swift hitched her wagon to it is that her boyfriend at the time trashed her, and Taylor Swift is no dummy, and she knew that if she was associated with a woman of color being trashed, especially for a woman like Taylor Swift, who was the Aryan Nation poster girl 10 years ago.
Right.
So she has to be. Anyway, speaking of women of color. Yeah, this is crazy about FKA Twigs. So somebody leaked all her. See, this is why you need to have. You have to have everything on a hard copy.
Or you got to do like Travis Scott. It just has to fall into the bottom of the ocean.
Throw it in the bottom of the ocean.
It's all on my phone. It's irretrievable.
I know.
85 of her demos for her upcoming project were somebody hacked into her computer, took them and has leaked them onto the internet. So now she's starting all over. And the whole idea of, if you love these artists, hacking into their stuff and stealing it, it's just really insane. And I feel for her because that's such a violation. It's such a violation.
You're assuming that, it could be deliberate sabotage too.
Yeah, it's horrible.
People are not... All right, let's before we bring on Michael, let's just remember some really great people from various realms of entertainment who passed this week. Not Ronald Isley. Rudolph Isley,
one of the founding members,
founding member of the Isley Brothers. I was listening to Giving It Back yesterday, which is, if you've never heard, is the Isley Brothers covers album. Hands down, one of the best records of its time. And I would say hands down better versions of the original songs than the originals.
Right.
So it's very sad. He had left the group a few years ago because he became a minister. But the Isley Brothers, I'm sure you know this, have had a hit in every decade since the 50s.
Wow.
So, hugely influential. And so, Ernie Isley.
Were you a fan from the first time you heard them?
Of course. I think the Isley Brothers are, I would say, I love Earth, Wind, and Fire, but to me, the Isley Brothers were even better than Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Yeah.
Nothing against Earth, Wind, and Fire. Don't people with onks come at me. But
no.
I think the Isley Brothers have sorry. You have an image of people running down the street.
Oh God!
Trying to hit me.
I just could see you in your neighborhood with a bunch of hoteps screaming, coming at you.
Coming at me.
Throwing patchouli oil.
Damn you, hoteps! Damn you, hoteps! Leave the white devil alone. No, I love the Isley Brothers. Phenomenal group. So he passed. Suzanne Summers, who I'm not going to lie, was not a part of my childhood. But there's nothing bad to say about the woman. She fought for equal pay for women
and paid a price. She paid a price early on. She's like, I'm a big star in this show. She asked for what the men got and was treated like shit.
Right. And treated like a bimbo.
And then she was like, okay, fine. And went and did her Las Vegas act and then started writing her books. And then if you are a certain age, you will never forget the motherfucking Thigh Master.
Yeah. All right. Sorry. I'm doing two things. I'm directing traffic here. Michael just texted me. I'm like, people are asking, are the utilities included in the apartment? Can I do this? All right. And then why don't you talk about the last two, and then we'll bring our pal in, Piper Laurie and Gail O'Neill.
Well, Gail O'Neill,
I'd forgotten about her. Not in a mean way.
Because you probably hadn't seen her.
Right.
Gail O'Neill was a huge, she was just that black model whose face I would see when I was younger
everywhere.
And just thought she was the most beautiful thing.
Gorgeous woman. And
she's one of the early models who we saw leave modeling and really move to having a successful career in journalism, and they've not, she was only 61. They've not disclosed, why she passed, but Gail O'Neill is a trailblazer and pioneer, and needed to.
She was a newscaster too.
Yeah, she was. She absolutely was. And then we have the amazing Piper Laurie, who to me will always be Carrie's mother. Carrie's
I never saw Carrie. I've seen parts of Carrie. I've seen parts of Carrie. I know what it's about. Or maybe I have. The creepy movies creep me out.
I love Brian. Brian De Palma took what everybody thought would just be, it's the first Stephen King film adapted, right?
Oh, okay.
And yeah, I know, I see him. And everybody, when it was made, they just thought it's John Travolta's first movie. It's like Nancy Allen, a lot of people. They just thought they were going to get a B-level horror movie. Brian De Palma directs this film. It's a masterpiece. It becomes a huge hit. Piper Laurie is nominated for an Oscar. Sissy Spacek is nominated for an Oscar. Piper is a legendary New York theater actress. So rest
and on
in
a
power.
really good Law and Order episode too. Remember the one where she plays the foster mother with the cane?
Oh my!
And then she kills the kid. She ties him to the chair and kills the kid with the cane. And it's the slow kid who narcs her out.
Right. Oh, man.
Yeah. So rest in peace to her.
All right, so let's introduce. Well, you know what? We're going to take a break.
Let's take a break and then
we're going to introduce our guest.
Hello, Pantheon Podcasts podcast listeners. Christian Swain here to tell you more about my experience with Raycon earbuds. Our family now has 3 pairs of Raycon earbuds around the house, and my wife just grabbed a pair of the Headphone Pros to replace some headphones from a company that was double the price. And yes, she loves them. Now, if you haven't pulled the trigger on a pair of Raycons, or even if you have, but you're in the market for another pair because they're just that good, well, now is the time to check them out, because they just launched their upgraded model of the best-selling everyday earbuds. With Raycon's upgraded everyday earbuds, now you also get active noise cancellation, ergonomic design, and multi-point connectivity that lets you pair with 2 devices at once. New quick charge function, 3 customizable sound styles, plus awareness mode. Available in a variety of vibrant new colors to complement any and all skin tones. I even have a pair of earbuds in a cool green color. I have tried just about every earbud known to humankind, and these Raycons are fantastic. Seriously, if you've been wanting to check out Raycons, there truly is no better time. You're going to ask yourself why you didn't check them out sooner, and Raycon offers a 30-day happiness guarantee. So what are you waiting for? Go to buyraycon.com/Pantheon today to get 20% off your Raycon order, plus free shipping. That's right, you'll get 20% off and free shipping at buyraycon.com/Pantheon. buyraycon.com/Pantheon.
And we're back.
We're back. All right. Coming up to batting for the, I'm going to use every sports reference known to mankind because Michael has already admitted he's not a Knicks, he is not a basketball guy. I'm going to do what I do every time we have an author. I'm going to hold up the book to the screen that no one's going to see except for me, Courtney, and the author. And it's also backwards. So I'm going to read it. All right. Michael Azerrad is the best. He's the best. And he has a new book out called The Amplified Come As You Are, The Story of Nirvana, which is an annotated, supersized, pumped up, really, really, really interesting reworking. It's not a revision, it's a complete reworking of his classic, and I use the word deliberately, book Come As You Are about Nirvana. He has also written, Michael, forgive me for this, and Our Band Could Be Your Life, Scenes from the American Indie Underground, 1981, 1991. He's appeared lots of fabulous places. He takes a dandy picture. He's been a writer for The New Yorker. Ooh, you were for The New Yorker? Cool. The New York Times, The Wall Street Journal, and Rolling Stone. And he's great, and he's a native New Yorker. And Michael, welcome.
Thank you, Amy.
Oh,
Great
we
to be
look
here.
at you. Can we turn on your visual? I haven't seen you forever. But anyway, how are you?
I'm very well, thanks. And how are you, Amy?
I am fine. Courtney, how are you? How are we doing?
I'm black and blessed.
Oh, I'm neither. But neither of them. Well, I'm going to ask the first question. And Michael, it's this really good book. And can I just say I like whoever designed the book did a really good job. I like it sort of reminds me of a textbook. And I say that as a high compliment. It's really kind of, especially with the little annotated at the bottom in yellow, like when you used to buy your used textbooks at Barnes and Noble.
Right.
Remember that? If you were in school.
And all the footnotes and everything that would be in there. Absolutely.
There's actually a story behind the cover. You'll notice that the designer is named Lawrence Azerrad.
Nepo baby.
Yep, totally. Yep. Lawrence is, I think he's my third cousin. So our great grandfathers were brothers, and he is a very highly acclaimed art director, and he designed the cover for Californication and Yankee Hotel Foxtrot.
Oh.
And he's done all of Wilco's stuff ever since and won a Grammy. And he was kind enough to do the cover of my book, too.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah.
It does look really super cool, and there's great pictures in here. And So let me ask you, I guess, what is the obvious question? You had a very successful book. It's still read. It's still talked about. Why go back? What was the motivation to go back and annotate it and just talk about that? What was the motivation to do that?
Come As You Are is the only book that was written about Nirvana while Nirvana still existed. It's the only book that has interviews with every member of the band, including Kurt Cobain. And it's very much a product of its time. And now 30 years have passed, and a lot of the people who read this book were born after it was published. And part of the reason I did the annotated version was to kind of explain the 90s to people who weren't there. But also I think it's to maybe explain the 90s for people who were there and are still trying to make sense of what happened, especially with the Nirvana phenomenon. Looking back on it, it was a really huge deal. And I don't know, I'm a big believer in trying to make sense of what happened to you in your life. So that was part of it. Another part was I thought there was a lot to say about the journalistic process that I could, bring to bear using my experience of writing Come As You Are as an example. And then also I just thought it would be fun to point out cool little things in the book that I didn't remark on the first time, like, the significance of the song Get Together. Chris Novoselic sings a little snippet of that before Territorial Pissings. And there's actually a lot to say about that song and how it relates to Nirvana in that particular song. So I know there's a lot of things, a lot of angles that I was exploring with this.
And it also kind of, just reading through it, it's almost like a conversation you're having with yourself, because you'll post. There's something that was in the original book, and then you're like, actually, that wasn't quite true. In hindsight, because when you're in the middle of it, I would imagine you don't, not that you have distance as a journalist, but 30 years, geez, yeah. 30 years. This is so crazy. The day that he killed himself, which obviously was one of the big news events of its time and one of the big moments for those of us who watched MTV News. Kurt Loder announcing this. It was this is going to sound so weird. It was the same day that Ramon Cortines, who was the chancellor of the New York City public school system, was basically driven out of the school system. Right. And I remember thinking almost more impacted by that. I was like, oh, great. Now who's going to run the schools? Though I was impacted by Kurt, but that's my weird perspective. But it is interesting how you're having, and also to kind of, there are some people who at the time were very much portrayed as villains. I think Courtney certainly being one of them, and Dave Grohl in a way was sort of portrayed as a villain. And I think you do, you really try to present them in a more even-handed light.
Yeah. Part of it, I think, was, correcting the record and using, insights and wisdom I'd gained, in the intervening years to, again, amplify, the story and the characters in it. So, yeah. 30 years will give you a lot of perspective.
Nirvana had such a, I don't think people realize that their run was rather short for a rock band, but yet they still have such a cultural impact. Why do you think all of these years later, people still are interested and there's still more things to find out about them?
We live in a time of, fake news, fake food, fake politicians, artificial intelligence, deep fakes, there's so much in this world that's just fake and unreal, artificial. And Nirvana was for real. They were incredibly passionate and, the buzzword, authentic. They were for real and they meant every moment of it. And that cannot be faked. And I think that's a timeless quality that people. It's proof that it's timeless, I guess. So far, is that people still appreciate that quality in a world of such manufactured artificial stuff. So I think that's a big part of it. I think it's a kind of cliche that people who die young, get kind of canonized and mythologized, and that certainly plays a part in it too. But I think in the end, it's the music. It's that genuine feeling of the music that is people will always crave, or at least some people will.
The first time I heard "Smells Like Teen Spirit," I think it's just appropriate. I used to spend a lot of time in Portland, Oregon, because my best friend, who is still my best friend, but she lived in Portland for a very long time. And the first time I heard it, her then teenage daughter was literally blasting it on repeat. And I think it's early in the morning. I think I came into her room at one point and go, "Will you turn this fucking shit down already?" Mm-hmm. And then I realized what it was. And they really were, having spent a lot of time in the Pacific Northwest. I mean, Nirvana really did sum up the ethos and the sort of, I hate the word vibe, but it's the only word I can think of right now, of that time and of that movement and of that, the sort of like the kids, like, the no future, the American version of, Johnny Rotten's No Future, because they didn't, have a future really.
Yeah. Their Nirvana, was a very, in addition to being timeless, they were also very much of their time, very zeitgeisty band. And so, that's one big category of the annotations in my book, which is just putting them into a cultural context and showing how so much of the Nirvana phenomenon keyed into cultural and sociological and political currents that were going on at the time. So, things like, the Republican moral panic that Pat Buchanan kicked off at the 1992 Republican National Convention, heroin chic, slackers, all kinds of, fears that Gen X had growing up in the shadow of AIDS and, Reagan and, the Cold War Part 2 and all kinds of things like that. So a lot of the annotations are about that, tying in Nirvana to this kind of greater cultural context.
Were they the first? Oh, I'm sorry, Courtney.
They were really smart with visuals. Like at the time where Smells Like Teen Spirit, when that single was huge, I worked in video promotion at Columbia. And so, dealing with all of the networks, I remember that video really connecting with that MTV generation of kid. Because you would not really think of, just when I think of Nirvana, it's almost synonymous with MTV, which is weird because that kind of band you would think would shun the almost mainstreamness of MTV. But they really captured the way a lot of kids felt in a generational moment that I remember it just was always so big. And I think that they were really smart in their visuals because it really spoke to people at a certain age. And I think that has carried on because every teenagers, I think you all go through that period and have that moment. Like how did they come up with a lot of their visual stuff? I always wondered, was it Kurt? Was it a full band decision? Like how did they really make decisions on the visual part of their career?
Well, I mean, Kurt, before he dropped out of high school and a few weeks before graduation, was on track to go to art school, and he probably would have been some sort of commercial artist or something. So, the visual stuff was all Kurt. He called the shots, on how the videos went, what the T-shirts looked like, obviously album covers, anything visual, that was Kurt. And this Smells Like Teen Spirit video, for example, was based in no small part on a outline that he made that was actually based on a a movie called Over the Edge from I think 1980.
I remember that movie.
And
is that Matt Dillon? Is that Matt? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's one of Matt Dillon's first movies.
Yeah.
And and that movie just is like tailor made for Kurt. And I have a whole long annotation about Over the Edge and its influence on the Smells Like Teen Spirit video and Kurt. But yeah, Kurt controlled the visuals. That was his thing. Actually, one of my favorite, my pet annotation actually is how when I decode the back cover of In Utero, Kurt actually hid a little secret message in there that I don't think anyone has heretofore discovered. But it's in my book and it's pretty cool. So Kurt made a lot of visual art. He made sculptures and painted a lot, and that was Kurt's sensibility right there.
Were they the first? Were they considered the first kind of indie rock band to kind of blow up mainstream? I mean, there were other indie rock bands before that, but were they considered the ones that kind of blew the doors open for other bands?
I would say that the bands who blew open the doors would be REM.
Oh, right. Okay.
Jane's Addiction, Faith No More.
All right.
Yeah.
I don't know, but the interesting thing is they all just seem really different from Nirvana. You know what I mean? It's almost like they don't even seem like they're in the same category.
Well, REM, I mean...
true, but
REM...
But REM always felt like, to me, they had their own category. And Nirvana just felt like its own thing. Nothing else sounded like that.
I mean, you could name a lot of antecedents stylistically to Nirvana, and they put their own spin on it. But I mean, those other bands REM made some beautiful records.
Yeah,
I love Nothing's Shocking by Jane's Addiction. So I get what you mean, Courtney. Like, for me, it's the way that Nirvana, like I say, kind of captured the zeitgeist, this mood of a whole generation of kids, rather than like REM, for instance, kind of making some really beautiful records that touched your heart. But I don't know, something about Nirvana was bigger on a sociological level.
They feel just as important today. Like, you have this book, and this book seems like essential reading today, just like it would have been 30 years ago. You know what I mean? There's just a feeling around them that has always felt different than the other bands.
Well,
like, we
and
love
that's what I tried to sort of unpack that with the annotations. You're exactly right. Yeah. Like, I was trying to make sense of that phenomenon, for other readers, for people, like I say, people who were not born yet and people who were around, but also, for myself, how did this happen? And so it's a whole big constellation of factors. And I try to touch on as many as I can.
I mean, I think with Nirvana, and you talk about this, first off, their metal influences, they tried to play them down, but you couldn't really kind of deny it. And metal is always sort of like punk metal. It kind of leads into, but they were like a college rock band for people who didn't go to college or barely even finished high school. I mean, that kind of rage, it's funny to,
but also they were for the people who went to college and high school, right? It felt like there was a piece in their music that was human that everybody, I feel like, gravitated toward. Because I wasn't a huge fan back then. I didn't give a shit. But when the MTV Unplugged, I sat and I watched that. I don't know why I felt like I needed to watch it. I didn't really care. And I sat there, and by the end of it, I had such a newfound respect for them. I was like, these guys, it's special. And sometimes you can't, trying to figure out what's the secret magic sauce is hard to do, because they still feel special. Even for me, a guy who I have all of their records. I don't know if I've listened to any of them more than once, right? But it still feels special to music.
Yeah, there's something about Nirvana that, had this ineffable quality. You can't really put your finger on it. It makes you feel something. You're not even quite sure what it makes you feel, but it's super powerful. And that's the beauty of music right there.
Did they all share? did he wrote all of the songs? Was there a division of labor? I know REM, they put all their names on the tracks. And I think the same with U2, right? But was Kurt the only credited songwriter?
Well, that's a whole can of worms. Another thing that I get into in the book, but Kurt basically wrote the songs, but a good argument could be made that rock songs aren't just the chords, the melody, and the words. It's the arrangements. It's how the band plays. Like the sound of the Rolling Stones. Like, I don't know, what if Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers played the Rolling Stones catalog? They might not have been as successful. Who knows? It's the sound, the band sound. And so there was a little bit of an intra-band fight about publishing royalties and things like that. And eventually Kurt and Chris got a piece of Smells Like Teen Spirit and a few other songs that kind of got jammed into shape. But that's a whole story that you can read about in the book.
Now, what about Courtney? I feel like I'm very confused.
What about Courtney?
I'm confused about Courtney because just my little bit of knowledge, fans didn't seem to like her very much.
I mean, the Child Protective Service is about to take her kid away portion of the book, by the way.
And what was her involvement, if any, with the band? Or was she just Kurt's wife? Or was she... Because I feel like some people try to give her the Yoko treatment.
Oh, well, yeah, I don't think she was any sort of Yoko in this situation. I don't know, she was Kurt's wife, and she's a powerful personality, very outspoken, very opinionated, and very, bright, incisive mind. And she's a musician in her own right, and an artist in general in her own right. And she was not shy about venturing her opinions. And I'm sure, some people would say she was too forthright in venturing her opinions. But the fact remains, it was Kurt's band, and nothing happened without his say so. So I think maybe her, interference in the band's, especially artistic process, is way overstated.
Well, I mean, like you said, I mean, she was his wife, and I will say, just not to harp too much on her, but in reverse, it was always assumed that Kurt wrote all of her stuff, and then when he died, that Billy Corgan wrote all of her stuff. So she never really got any real credit for her own material.
Yeah. I guess that it cuts both ways. Unfortunately, I'm not. Yeah, I haven't really followed that whole foo-for-all about who actually wrote some of those whole songs, but that's the kind of thing I stay out of.
A very wise decision. I want to ask you, if you do not mind, about just a little bit about. Is there such a thing as indie rock anymore? I mean, does that category just sort of, is it a thing of its time? Can there be an indie rock in an age of where anybody can put out any record at any time and stream it, and you don't need the label and you don't need the apparatus?
Well, okay, so you mean indie rock in the fiscal sense of not being distributed by a major label, rather than the genre.
Well, a little of both. Yeah.
Well, I mean, there are still independent labels that are not distributed by major labels. So there, and there is rock music on those labels. Therefore, there is indie rock.
Right.
And the whole point about being on a major label is that you have this apparatus around you. You have, publicists whose emails and phone calls get returned. You have promotion people. And marketing people who can get, records into, stores or, online stores and things like that. Radio promotion people who get songs placed, whereas the indie labels don't, especially the smaller ones, don't have that clout. So, there's still that quantum difference. The major label artists still have an incredible advantage.
Oh yeah, because they're still fighting, for all of those banners you see on all of the DSPs and all of that
Right.
the spots you see on the side and the little ads. Yeah, it definitely is a bullfight for those spaces.
But the thing is, like yeah, exactly, and the internet, I think, has enabled this idea of indie, because, like you say, anyone can just put out their record. You could just, you can stream your record all over the planet if you want. No one may know about it because it's just you and you don't have a publicist or a marketing team, but you can do it. And that was, that's sort of like the, to the nth power version of what indie rock was in the 80s, which was starting your own, independent distribution system, your own DIY parallel universe. And now the internet has just enabled that 1,000-fold.
Yeah, because there's these artists. I mean, maybe it's a function of being old, but there'll be these artists. They're number one. I see it more kind of in rap, but there'll be a number one album, and you're like, who the hell is this guy? But then when you talk to the target audience, which is not 64-year-old white women, believe it or not, they're like, oh yeah, I saw him on TikTok. That's how I know him, and he's a big star now. And it just seems like that's become the new version of like making the cassette tapes and passing it around to your friends.
Although it's, of course, as you know, TikTok has also been kind of big-footed by very powerful.
All my friends who I know that work at labels, it's weird because you have these giant labels, which a bunch of them have, to me, very poor marketing. The whole idea is sitting around like, can we get it to TikTok? And TikTok really will dictate. These kids, you could try to push it to them. They will find something and a challenge, and if you can get your thing going, TikTok will get you a hit. That's what turned Lizzo's record around. That's what turned Paint the Town Red by Doja Cat around. Like TikTok, that's the new marketing tool for everything. If you can get it to TikTok and it becomes a hit there, then it can kind of cross to radio and other things.
Yeah, and also commercials. You get your TikTok hit put on a Chevrolet ad, and
but see, this is why everybody's selling their catalogs. They're selling their catalogs to these nameless, faceless capital venture groups, and that's all they're doing, right? They're taking those catalogs and they're selling it. I want it in commercials. I want it on an online ad. Put it in a TV show. Put it in a movie. It's weird.
Indeed.
It's such a, I don't know, it's like a question that should be answered and should be asked and maybe shouldn't be answered, but what the hell? I mean, they have lasted. There is still huge interest. They're almost like they are a mythical band in so many ways, Nirvana, because as you said, so many people were not alive to watch this very brief comet of influence and power and creativity happen. What is their tangible sort of influence? Because I am sure, and this is not to be like the Paul McCartney and Wings analogy, I'm sure there's a lot of people who do not know that Dave Grohl had a band before Foo Fighters,
Well, I mean, it's interesting. I make a differentiation between influence and inspiration. Right around, after Nirvana exploded, there were a lot of bands that were influenced by Nirvana. In other words, they sounded kind of like them. And there was a ton of them. They got signed by the truckload, in the mid-90s. And that's something that the music industry always does. They always try to, copy the hit and try to get a,
Candlebox, where are you now?
Yeah, exactly. There's tons of them. But there are also people who were...
We need to do a whole Candlebox show.
But there's inspiration. There are people who are inspired to make music by someone else, and the music doesn't necessarily sound like them. Like my friend Ty Braxton, who's a really acclaimed composer. He was inspired by Nirvana. Apparently, Lil Peep was inspired by Nirvana.
That I think I understand. I mean, he has spoken about that. I read interviews with him where he is, but he also grew up in a household where his parents were young enough to have played Nirvana. You know,
but Lil Peep does not sound like Nirvana. Is the point?
No.
And I don't know, MIA has said she was inspired by Nirvana. I mean, I think the Avett Brothers said they were inspired by. It's like a lot of people were inspired by Nirvana, and that. I think is the real musical legacy, not necessarily bands that sound like them.
They captured an angst that I don't care if you like hip hop, if you like dance music, all teenagers and people, you get to a certain period of life, and I think you have that angst, and they encapsulated that moment, and it has gone through generations.
Yeah.
Well, it never changes.
Yeah.
I mean, things are worse now than they ever were. In many ways. I mean, I'm very grateful that I am not that age to push back, but there's a lot to push back about. I just want to see, I always heard a lot of, obviously, Pixies in Nirvana, but I also heard a lot of replacements in Nirvana too. Am I way off base here?
I actually asked Kurt about the replacements, and he said he never really listened to them.
Oh, I don't believe him.
I don't know. I looked at his record collection. I didn't see any replacements. Replacements are sort of like almost like more old school rock and roll.
Yeah,
and they weren't. The replacements weren't part of the community, really, of the indie rock community that Kurt really admired. People who kind of networked and were part of that kind of DIY thing. They were actually a little bit out of that. And so Kurt, I'm talking more about bands like Butthole Surfers, Husker Du, Sonic Youth, Big Black, people who were part of that community. That's more, Kurt's world. But I mean, if you want to talk about roots of Nirvana, I mean, you could all go all the way back to Creedence Clearwater Revival. Really big influence. If you think about it, really basic chords, great melodies, a kind of screamy lead singer, very basic music.
Right. Just drawing more from like an obvious American sort of Americana, for lack of a better word, kind of bass, But it's that chorus loud. Not chorus loud, verse loud, that dynamic. But it's not like that hasn't been going on forever in rock and roll. I mean, that's a pretty standard template for a lot of rock music. I also just have a hard on for the Replacements. So,
No, I think... he didn't. If I had to choose one, Twin Cities punk rock band that influenced Nirvana, it probably would be Husker Du, or Soul Asylum. So the classic rock element of Nirvana, I think, is partially what made them accessible to large groups of people. People were tapping into something that sounded. They had some threads of things that they were very familiar with, like Creedence Clearwater Revival. You could hear some Beatles in Nirvana. And then, a lot of the classic indie rock that people...
And the metal aspect of it. Yeah, I mean, you don't become that huge a group if you're only speaking to, a bunch of disaffected kids wearing flannel in Aberdeen. They kind of touched upon every kind of, I mean, you just can't.
I think they went across gender lines. They went across racial barriers. Black kids like them. White kids like them. Asian kids like them. Latin kids like them. They hit on something that everyone feels, and I think that's why it is carried through all.
And women, like, it was very obvious that Kurt was, and his roots.
Well, he was pretty, right? And he was a pretty boy, and I think girls just thought, "Oh my God!" They always love the pretty boy who can be kind of sad or something. They feel like I can save him or something.
I think you're right. I thoroughly agree, Courtney.
When you're 20, yes. I would look at him as a young mother going, wash your hair, young man.
Some of you girls when you're 20, it's like, no, I can save him.
Yeah, we all love, when we're in our 20s, we all love it. We all love a chunky, and then we realize they're stealing your silverware. Michael, I'm sorry, finish your thought, and then we're going to...
I think Courtney is exactly right. I mean, I think, let's face it, part of it was the fact that Kurt was a good-looking man. It really helped popularize the band, I think. And that's again like a timeless, pop truth. Going back,
it helps to have a good-looking lead singer.
Chuck Berry's good-looking man, Elvis Presley, good-looking man.
And I will give them this, and then we'll wrap up. Way ahead of their time in terms of pushing the quote unquote status quo genre, not genre, gender barriers, very clearly pro women, coming out of like a Riot Girl scene. So I have to always give them that they were a feminist group without you felt that as a woman that they were on your side,
Even though they were making quite aggressive music.
Yeah, but women can be aggressive, Michael.
Yes, women can be, but it's not.
I know what you mean. It was very male sounding.
Yeah.
It was very male sounding. I think that Unplugged really proved the. I mean,
aggressive music with a pretty boy, and you're going to get the ladies. You just are.
The men.
You absolutely are. But you're going to get a pretty boy who seems sensitive, thrashing. Girls are going to be like, that's my everything. He's my boyfriend. He's my husband. All of the things.
Michael. I'm just curious. We're just curious because we always talk about what we're listening to right now. Is there anything in particular you're listening to that has piqued your interest musically?
I love. There's a band called Horse Lords. Love them. They play in. I'm not even sure exactly what this means, but they play in just intonation, which is a type of tuning, and their latest album, I can't remember what it's called, but anyway, they are brilliant and they blow my mind. Lloyd Cole, his new album called On Pain.
He's still wow.
Yeah, he made basically a analog synth album, and it's exquisite and really moving. I love Deerhoof, their new album Miracle Level. Love Deerhoof. Love the new Sparks album.
Yeah. They make it look good for the old people, don't they?
Yeah, actually, it's funny. I was saying about how there's like not many bands that sound like Nirvana, but there's this younger band called Feeble Little Horse. They sound, and I really shy away from retro stuff. Jalen, love Jalen, mind blowing music. But Feeble Little Horse is like there's totally. They're like 90s alt rock, I shy away from the kind of that retro kind of thing. I want to hear music of it, of the moment, but I can't help it. I like them. Lorraine's new album, I Killed Your Dog. Really, really great.
There's a lot of animals in your list there. I see 2 horses and a puppy.
And they all seem to be dead in the titles. Like, what's going on? Dead or thrash?
What's happening? Why are people killing puppies? I don't know what I think about the puppy killing.
Well, it's a dog. It could be older. I killed your dog. Yeah,
I killed your dog. All right. Yeah. As if I always tell people, it's like you're acting as though I killed your dog or something. And
I think that might be part of how she got the album title. But yeah, it's L''RAIN. I really recommend that record.
Okay.
I've seen her name before.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Michael. Plug your book one more time, or I'll plug your book. I'm going to hold it up to the screen so that it's backwards and nobody can see it. Huh. The Amplified Come As You Are, The Story of Nirvana by Michael Azerrad with design by Lawrence Azerrad.
That's right.
I mean, and it really is it's really great. It's a wonderful book, Michael, and I wouldn't just say that because you're my friend. I would say it anyway.
Thank you, Amy.
No, it's really good. It's really, really, I have to admire you undertaking, because this is not like I'm just going to add a few like director's cut scenes in it. Like, this is a major undertaking, so bravo to you.
And I feel like I don't have to say this to our audience, but I am going to say it. Books matter. Reading matters. You know what? Christmas is coming up. And for your music people and your music nerds, music history is really important. It is. Here is a book that I think your people who love music will love. You have to do a Kris Kringle at work? How about the Nirvana book? You know what I'm saying? Perfect gift. Books matter, people. Read, please. Books matter.
And Hanukkah.
Well said, Courtney. Thank you.
And Festivus for the rest of us.
And Kwanzaa, all of the things.
Yeah. Michael, thank you for doing this.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, yeah, of course. And
did you get a haircut?
Michael?
No, you.
Oh, me. Yes,
the person that I can see. Did you get?
Yes,
it looks really good. No, I know.
Did you get your haircut just for this podcast?
Right.
Well, yeah, Michael, I did.
No,
I didn't.
Whenever they cut your hair, you get the bouncy curl, and that's when all your curl stuff comes out.
Yeah. It's because it's blown dry. No, I had to because it was getting to the point where I was like looking at myself, going, "This is too goddamn long." Yes, I did. Thank you.
No, but I know. I was like, she looks nicer than usual.
Whoa! Well, whenever I have a guest, you know, I put a little extra effort into it.
Courtney, I think you meant she looks even nicer than ever.
Thank you,
Michael.
Yeah,
that.
Thank you. Jesus Christ. No, whenever I have a guest, I put a little extra effort into it. I would have worn some maquillage, but I woke up a little too early and I'm grading papers. But thank you. Yes, it's not going to look like this in about 2 days, but I'm just...
No, but it looks really good, yeah.
I'm fixing the curls.
Yeah.
All right. Courtney, take us out, please.
You know what it is, everybody. It's ImmaLetYouFinish on the Pantheon Podcast Network. It's show number 160.
He does this every week. I don't know why he does this like cornball accent every week. I need you to do it in Spanish next week.
Okay, you want me to do it like Bloomberg? Me llamo Courtney. He was the best with that.
El Pantheon Podcasts.
I know. He was like El Pantheon Podcasto Networko. Yeah. I used to love his phonic Spanish because at least he tried and he did it. Our mayor now is invisible, and then when we do see him, he's like, "What do you mean? Like, my people were working." It's like, sir. Anyway. You're listening to us on the Pantheon Podcast Network, where there is a plethora, of music shows, every kind of style, every genre, and us. To the people who've been listening to us directly from the Pantheon Podcast feed, thank you. We appreciate you. To our day ones and the people who've been coming along, joining this ride with us, thank you. We appreciate you. Leave us a message on our Facebook page. I'm going to let you finish. All one word. We're really active there. We have all the other ones, but we're most active there. So go there, or you can find us on TikTok at I'm going to Let You Finish Podcast, and we will see you next week. Toodles.
It's NFL draft season, and that means it's time to start thinking about fantasy football. FantasyPoints.com features industry-leading experts and prognosticators using proprietary hand-charted data to help you score more fantasy points. FantasyPoints.com is the place to go for whatever kind of fantasy football you play. Whether you play fantasy football, daily fantasy sports, or do a little bit of everything, Fantasy Points has the meticulously researched content to guide you to victory. And why wait for the fall? Fantasy Points also covers the new spring football league, the UFL. Join the guru, John Hansen, Scott Barrett, Joe Dolan, and other massive names in the fantasy football universe with an exclusive offer. Use code Pantheon for 15% off any Fantasy Points package, including the all-in package, with access to every article, tool, and data nugget that Fantasy Points has to offer. That's FantasyPoints.com and code Pantheon for 15% off at Fantasy Points. FantasyPoints.com, code Pantheon. Score more fantasy points.